everyone, welcome to another edition of CS Cyber. I'm Sean.
And I'm Chad.
And that's the CS piece. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the city of Columbus, Ohio, which happens to be our home state. They have fallen victim to a security incident, and there's been a lot published about that incident. And so we're just going to kind of go around of what we know so far, and then talk just a little bit more about, kind of mitigating circumstances and things. This is the very end of Ransomware Awareness Month, which I didn't even know existed, to be truthful with you.
I didn't either.
Yeah, well, it's the end, so yeah, you missed it. So let's talk a little bit about it. Chad, you probably looked at this more than I have, so what happened so far?
Yeah, so this has really been an interesting week for news. I mean, we've talked about a couple different things on the episodes. So this was, it's a developing story. It looks like a threat actor initially gained access via a website download. So they got into the environment somehow. It's not really clear yet, if EDR stopped it, if a user saw something, how it kind of escalated from there. But it looks like the city at some point took their systems offline to prevent any further exfiltration of data or deployment of ransomware. So
let's talk a little bit about that initial vector that they're talking about. So when this originally hit the news, they were saying that somebody had clicked on a phishing link.
Not a phishing link.
Now they're saying it wasn't a phishing link. And when they say somebody clicked on a website download, what does that mean?
Oh man, websites are full of links in the background and things loading. It could literally be anywhere. It could be a poisoned URL. It could be a legitimate link that someone thinks they're going to that is redirected.
And we've had that happen before. So we've had instances where, just to give the audience an example of how this works, somebody does a web search for maybe it's a common tool that they download. If you're an IT worker, maybe you're looking for that tool that you always go to for whatever.
It could be anything like WinZip, WinSCP.
Right. And so I put that in search, and I click on one of those. If I'm in Google, I see sponsored ad or sponsored link, right?
It's the first one or two
right
every time.
And we've seen instances of those where they're poisoned. So the actual link behind there, even though it's showing in Google, and I think there's a lot of assumptions that that link is good and okay because it's there, ends up being not good.
Right. And then you hit the landing page. It looks probably very similar to what you're expecting. You download and off they go.
Yep. So in this particular case, the mayor is indicating that this was a sophisticated threat actor. Specifically says overseas, which is now I think the majority of where these are coming from.
Yeah, I agree.
Did indicate that it was thwarted. But yet still 6.5 terabytes of information was stolen.
That's where it kind of gets a little fuzzy.
It does get fuzzy there. So, we're not throwing shade at Columbus. I think that some of this terminology gets, maybe confused or, maybe whoever was creating the article didn't fully understand what was being said. But to just give the audience an idea of how this works, at the very, very end, so after they've exfiltrated all of the data, they'll flip the ransomware encryption button, right? And then they'll start that process. So I don't know if the city is saying that they were able to shut down their computers fast enough, that they were able to, kind of mitigate the encryption. They had kind of indicated in one of the articles that no encryption had occurred, which I wouldn't see how that would have been possible.
Yeah, I mean, I read that one too. I think maybe they got it in the exfil stage, right? And they were able to kind of
that's possible.
Identify it and shut down their network before the flip, switch got flipped. But that's a lot of data.
Yeah, it is. So let's talk about some mitigating factors. How would you not get to the point? How do I get it so that I don't get to this point? What are some of the things that can be done from a control perspective?
Well, EDR, right? I think EDR is the last line of defense. It's on the endpoints. We've talked about this a lot. I was just talking to James just before we recorded this episode.
And James is?
James is our manager. He handles EDR. What is James's exact title?
Pharaoh of EDR, I guess.
Yeah. So I was talking to James about EDR, and he was indicating that we get about 25 alerts, 25 to 50 alerts per day per customer. So
Wow.
if your EDR isn't alerting you on anything for months, like you may want to check that out, right? Because I think with EDR, a lot of times you get what you pay for. And if you're not getting alerted, you really need to look at the configuration of that.
It's an interesting statement because I think that I've heard that from some people where, we've talked about EDR, they're not a customer, and we've talked about what they have. And they're like, yeah, I'm really comfortable with it. It doesn't say anything to me. So I feel comfortable that it's there on standby and ready to go. But it's funny that if you talk to people that have had incidents and they've been through a scenario, they have the opposite perspective. So they say, well, if it's not saying anything, I'm concerned, right? Because we know that a well-tuned EDR, it should be alerting. You should be interacting with it.
It should be a little chatty, right? I mean, that's
right.
Depending on how it's configured and how it's tuned. I mean, it can be really chatty, or it can be tuned in pretty well. But you got to look at it. If you're not getting any alerts, you've just set it and forget it. You should really revisit that, I think.
Yep, absolutely. And in the perspective of, and what the article is saying, the updated article, that it was a link that was clicked, a malicious download, what are some of the mitigating factors there?
User awareness training, whitelisting websites versus just opening everything up. I know that's really tough. Like I say that like it's just easy to do. It's not. It's really tough to do.
Yeah.
But it's something worth looking at if
Right.
you have a smaller maybe department that only needs to go to certain places.
I think too, looking at your firewall controls, I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially with, we haven't talked about it a ton here, about next generation firewalls and getting some of some of those extra security controls where even Cisco Umbrella, right? Where you click on a link and it's validated.
Right.
I think web filtering, I think would come in handy. We don't know a lot about the bad link itself, so we don't know, did some of the next generation firewalls already have that loaded? We, of course, don't know what the city of Columbus had from a firewall perspective. But, this brings up a really good conversation, because even if you're looking at the latest DBIR, the Verizon Data Breach Investigative Report, misconfiguration is very, very high up on the list.
Yeah, I think we see that a lot when we're in the field, right? And I would just kind of piggyback on the firewall. You can't have a flat network anymore. You have got to segment your network. You have to run east and west traffic. You have to be capturing that through the firewall.
Yeah, that's probably a whole other conversation. As a company, we have taken the stance of working with clients to understand that things have to change. And sometimes that's not the easiest pill to swallow, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of clients possibly look for still security features to just be quiet. And, that's a really hard part about our business and about anything in security. And anybody that's listening knows that, trying to create an environment where security tools are quiet and just doing their work is impossible.
Right. All of these tools need people like, caring, feeding for them, and just, looking after them. Everything that we do generates a lot of alerts and a lot of logs, right? I mean, that's kind of the nature of what we do. So,
right. And you brought up some of the things that we counsel clients about, right? So the east-west piece. And just to explain to the audience, so when we talk about north-south traffic, that's traffic destined for the internet and back, right?
Right. Internal to external internet traffic.
Right. And then east-west is the internal communication of the network. So that's servers talking to workstations, things that are, I guess for a lack of better terms, behind the firewall.
Right. Everything flying around inside your network.
Yeah. So that's where the segmentation piece comes. We still run across a lot of networks today that are, I'll call them 1990s networks, where, there's not a lot of separation, some still flat networks. I think it's only to the point recently where network administrators are really getting in tune with network segmentation.
Yeah,
right.
I think that's a really important piece. I mean,
It is. It is a very important piece. But moving that layer 3 traffic, this is the key. Moving your layer 3 from your layer 3 switching to your firewall is a game changer.
It really is. Yeah. And it could save you a lot of headache down the road. If an incident does occur, you're really going to limit the impact to your organization.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
all right. Well, as we get more information about this attack, we'll certainly come forward with it. But we just wanted to give you an update on kind of where things are with Columbus, what is going on, and just having the information that it was a download versus a phishing link, is a little bit different. And we've started to see more and more of that. And so we'll keep an eye on it. And if we get more information, we'll definitely come out with a new episode and discuss that information.
yeah, this is one I'm going to follow for a while, I think.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. And I'm Sean.
I'm Chad.
And we'll see you on the next one.